My guest on the show today is Tom Frazier. This is the second time this has happened in the history of my podcast empire. It's not really an empire, but maybe it is. I don't know. So I had Tom. So the way Tom and I know each other, I actually had Tom on my tech podcast, and we talked about some really cool stuff that he's doing in the green data center space, some really cool stuff that sounds good for the world, good for businesses. And then we geeked out a little bit about both being former telecom people. Tom spent a lot of years at a big red company that provides lots of infrastructure for
True.
US and elsewhere. And I spent a lot of years in telecom as well. And I remember saying to Tom at the end of that interview after we wrapped up, I said, hey, like, I really want to have it. I want to get to know you on a personal level. So it's like almost like in a very friendly way. We've had like a great first date. And I'm like, all right, time to go like get to know you more, Tom. This is our second date, I guess. But yeah, so Tom is somebody that I got to know from a business context. And today we're going to get to know you on a little bit more personal thing. So Tom, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm excited to chat again. I mean, what you do is so important in the world. I think how we communicate between people, and podcast is such an awesome medium for it. So
it is
it's great
low
to be here.
stakes. Yeah, low stakes. You are where are you joining us from?
Seattle. I'm at home today.
Yeah, you're at home today, and you were just telling me about some horses and some blackberries and kids going off to school and everything, and that's what's so cool is we can do that. And Tom and I were just talking. Well, we both have kids in school, like how we can do that and be. I don't know. It sounds like you're a super dad. I just call myself a dad, but we do that. But then we get to come on and do things like podcasts and work on our businesses and all that cool stuff. It's really cool. So I'm really glad you're here. So Tom, we've got a lot to talk about today, and I think we'll just start with learning something that you nerd out about. So what's something that you nerd out about?
Well, I would say the thing that defines me, which is what I would nerd out about, is learning. Like
Learning.
my absolute passion is like I want to learn everything in the entire world that's possible to learn. And obviously that's not realistic, but that's what I nerd about the most. My wife will come home and I'll be watching something, some crazy physics thing on YouTube, and then she comes home the next time and I'm learning how to build a drag race car. There's just always my brain goes down these rabbit holes, and I
Yeah.
just try to experience the world.
Yeah. Were you like that? Where have you always been like that? Like, as a core part of your personality from as a child, where you're like really curious and wanted to know a lot?
Yeah, it's funny, well, talking about kids, because I see those same traits in my daughter. I have
Yeah.
two kids, a daughter and a son. My daughter, I see that in her as well, where she just wants to learn about something, and I've always been that way, and I think I got it from my dad at a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
He's very similar. He's got one of those garages that you walk in and there's all these things in there that you're like, I don't even know what half of this stuff is, but
Yeah.
it was all created for some purpose.
Yeah. So let's see, since we have you and you're a learner and you're always learning something, what is something you've learned recently that you think we would find interesting? At least some of us, myself and people listening. And what's something interesting that you've learned recently?
Well, I spend a lot of time right now. Obviously, it's also my job, but I spend a lot of
Mm-hmm.
time researching and learning about AI and the different aspects of AI and what that is going to mean, not from a productivity standpoint or just the technological basis, but how AI is going to impact humanity. And the thing that I haven't been able to shake in the past maybe 9 months is I very strongly feel that 2022 was the last year humanity existed in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
From
Mm-hmm.
essentially ChatGPT was the moment, not the product, but that was the moment that unlocked the world to integrating AI into everything.
Yeah.
And I'm really learning about how the philosophy of coexisting with technology at a very fundamental level, and it's very interesting. No one knows where we're going to end up, and there's polar opposite views. Regulate it because we have to put it in a box, to it's going to turn us into slaves, and it's just trying to make paper clips. There's all these different
Yeah.
aspects of AI, and I love it because we are writing that future together as
Yeah.
humanity right now.
Yeah. It's cool. I saw, I think it was LinkedIn yesterday. LinkedIn has a little news stories in the top right. And I think one of the news stories was next job for AI, CEO. That was the headline.
Yeah.
And they got a lot of people giving feedback on it, because like a lot of what a CEO does is delegate and have to represent and present and sort of things. Yes, being a CEO is obviously very artful, but a lot of the day-to-day is like AI can delegate. AI is probably is arguably better at delegating and managing than people would ever be, because there's no emotion attached. It's like, what's the way to maximize the productivity of this thing? Now that is frightening, but also at the same time, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I think we're for things that are very, if you, I look at as a CEO, I look at the lens of things, and there's three buckets. There's people, there's process, and there's technology. And those are like the three core things. AI will never deliver on the people side of that kind of triad ever. It's just not, empathy is a very hard thing to teach a computer. And it's hard to teach another human being, much less a computer.
Yeah.
So I don't think AI would be a good CEO. I think AI would be a great COO, right? It's going to operate the company. But at the end of the day, as a CEO, like ask any CEO, there's some portion of the success that's due to luck, some portion that's due to empathy and that decision-making of people. I don't know. I'm not sure I buy into that job.
Yeah, or either. Well, we don't want to put you out of business or me out of business. You're a CEO of a number of companies, and I'm the CEO of Army One over here. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if at some point this podcast actually becomes a
That's one more thing about AI. Like, I think when you look at the history of creating companies, Silicon Valley was started, and it was hugely expensive to start a tech company, tens or hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And then it became 10 to $1 million. And as AI gets closer and closer, and it does more and more things that are not people related, I think we're going to see an absolute decimation of the venture capital industry, because one man show, one woman shows can do all the things. So these bootstrap companies of one person empires, I think, I don't know when, but I think we will see $1 billion exit to a one person company. I think that will happen.
That would be, wow. Tom, is it going to be you?
I mean,
is it going to be you? Are we?
I wish.
Yeah. I'm like, I wish too. That'd be great.
I wish, but we'll see. It's really great at writing software. It's really great at doing tasks and procedures.
Yeah.
And the more you can lean on the process and technology side and keep the people side just to the founder, I think we're going to see a huge wave of startups that are going to happen and solve major problems of the world, and do so at a cost that's negligible, and ultimately that's going to change the concept of money.
Yeah. I had a client of mine. He's always like, man, this management thing would be so much easier without people involved. Like, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
With their emotions and their needs and their wants and all the things that can happen in their life that have them not be able to show up fully at work. I'm like, yeah, that is a benefit to artificial intelligence. It doesn't have any of those things. So Tom, let's talk about your comfort zone, and let's talk first about something that you know about yourself that is definitely inside of your comfort zone, that is most definitely outside of other people that you know. So something that's inside your comfort zone, then people like they're like that's a hard pass. That's a no.
I think it's uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
I think I am very comfortable with uncertainty, which as an umbrella includes change, or all kinds of unknowable things. And just as an example, when my wife and I, we've been together, I don't know, 17 years or so. We first got together, this drove her crazy, and now she's accepted it. But when I travel somewhere, if we go away for like a 2-week holiday, my preference is to pick the starting point and the end point, and every major decision we flip a coin. So we go to London, we land in London, heads we go to Spain, tails we go to Italy, tails, boom, we go to Italy. Where are we going to eat? We'll flip a coin. We take the third restaurant on the left or the third restaurant on the right. Like that whole idea of uncertainty, like, is fuel for me. I absolutely love it.
Wow. Yeah, this is a good example. I have a little bit of agita just hearing about this right now. So I'm like, I don't, I'm trying to, I'm thinking about that for me. I love the restaurant idea, but the flip a coin to go to a different area, I'm like, no, that is definitely not comfortable for me because I want to know when we're going to be there. I want to know some of the things we're going to do. But the food thing is cool. I like that. I really like that. You're traveling, you're just like, hey, let's flip a coin. We're going here or here. Interesting. You remind me of
Yeah.
if you're a comic book, that's what isn't that what Two-Face does in one of the Batman movies? He just flips a coin to make decisions about like we're gonna flip a coin to kill this person or not, or like I'm gonna go and do this crime or not. I like that. You're just kind of like a mastermind. I like that.
Well, the reason I love it is when you plan, again, just staying on the holiday kind of idea, when you plan a trip, so many times I've been disappointed from the expectation I had going in, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, I want to go to Paris and see the Eiffel Tower. Oh, actually, the Mona Lisa. I want to see the Mona Lisa at the Louvre. And you think you're going to have this quiet moment of inspiration seeing this great piece of work. And instead, you're surrounded by 500 people with iPhone cameras
Yeah.
taking pictures of this
Don't
thing.
forget selfie sticks too.
Yeah, and selfie sticks. Yeah. But when you flip a coin, you're like, okay, we're going to go to do this or do that. You have no expectation. And so anything from when you arrive there, even the journey to get there, you have no expectation. And so everything you're more open and receptive to.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it, at least for me, it allows the idea of like this unknowable joy to come into my life and experience things with a smile instead of the stress of kind of being disappointed.
See, this is this is one of the many reasons why we're here again, because that is brilliant. It reduces the stress and the expectation, and instead you have to kind of, it's almost like release the control so you can just enjoy the moment, which is, oh man, I love that. I'm not going to go any further on that right now, but I think we might go back into that. But I'm really interested to hear next what's something that is outside of your comfort zone that you know is inside of other people's.
Something that's outside of my comfort zone that's inside of other people. I'm really not good. It's ironic who I'm married to, but I'm really not good with blood and injury. And my wife, we were talking before, my wife runs a clinic at a cancer center, and her whole job is blood, like
Yeah.
as a profession.
Yeah.
And I really struggle with it, and having kids, like my kids get hurt, I can put on there's an emergency mode and
Yep.
do like a Superdad thing, but inside is like terrifying for me.
Yeah.
The idea of like something puncturing my kid's skin,
Yeah.
it's really hard for me. Really, really
Wow.
hard.
That is a really fascinating, that's such a fascinating dissonance between your answer to what's inside and what's not. Because I would say that one of the things with like injuries, especially as a parent, is like it's obviously never planned. And it's not like you're ever going to plan for your kids to get hurt. But the thing that's funny about that is you actually know exactly the outcome. If they scrape their knee, you know that they're going to bleed. Now, before we move on, since two dads here, are your kids similar? Do you see these two things that you just listed in your kids about the like less planning, more kind of like freedom? And then also like, are either of your kids like deathly afraid of blood even more so than most kids just generally don't like it, but that I've seen, do you see this in your two kids?
Mm, not really. I think I very actively try to not make my problems their problems. I think that's easy to do as a parent, is just make it, to
Yeah.
pass on the failures of yourself.
Yeah.
But my kids are very different children.
Yeah.
My daughter
Yeah.
started reading at a very young age. She's super academic, but she couldn't jump when she was little. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whereas my son, he's the opposite. He's such a physical, outdoorsy kid, but he's not that interested in traditional learning. So like I don't see those things being passed down to innately in my children, but you never know.
Yeah. You never know.
They
Still young.
develop so differently over time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So now let's say that I was able to give you 5 minutes and you got to speak to the entire world on anything you wanted to. what would you spend your 5 minutes on, and what would be your call to action for us at the end of it? And everybody in the world gets to hear this.
Well, for me, that's an easy one. I literally have one tattoo, and it's on my hand.
Tattoo, and I'm gonna give this to the audience. It looks like a D with a dot below it. That's what it looks.
But actually, so Tom,
what is that?
It's an old. I'm a typography nerd as well. Actually, you can see.
I see that you've got a Helvetica book behind you.
Behind me.
Or book type book.
Yeah. So that my tattoo is an interrobang. It's an old symbol that combines a question mark and an exclamation mark. And it is like the philosophy of my life, which is I don't know where I'm going to end up, but I'm very excited about the journey. And, you know, if I was to give a speech to the world, it would be about taking journeys and same with flipping a coin and, you know, all this, it's all interrelated for me.
Yeah.
But have these life experiences over time. And my call to action would be everybody in the entire world should go take dance classes as an adult. You know, I started learning how to do swing dancing and tap dancing when I was maybe 19. I got to, you know, a world stage level, I would say. And I've taught dance all over the world. And you can have experiences with people that you never thought was possible. So, you know, for example, if you're in a bad mood, you don't go out to go dancing and socialize with people.
That's right. Yeah.
And so anytime you do go, you're surrounded by this great energy of people. And it's the most simple social equalizer. So it doesn't matter if you're a Wall Street banker or a parking lot attendant, everyone has the same social capital and everybody chooses to be there and chooses to have experiences with other people. So that would be my call to action is, you know, be excited about the journey. Don't worry about the journey.
I love the dance thing. I actually have something similar. I don't know if it'd be my 5 minutes, but I have something similar. Every adult should go take an improv class.
Yeah.
Similar, right?
Similar idea.
A lot of similarities, right? Chances are you're not going to be perfect on the dance floor. There's no such thing as perfect in improv. Like, what does that even mean? You're going to have to interact with other people, and you quite frankly don't know exactly how it's going to go in dance or in improv because you're always with a partner, with a team of some type. So I really love that. And I've got a bunch of good questions when we come back from the commercial break. So we're going to do that right now, and we're going to be back in about 30 seconds.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on Talking to Cool People.
All right, Tom, we are back, and we're learning a lot about you. So what do we know so far? I'm thinking about this. So we know you're a world-class dancer in a few modalities. You are not a planner. In some ways, you are a planner. You are a planner. Because that was one of the things I was going to ask you about here is, well, when we know you're a dad, we know that you're afraid of blood, and your wife is a doctor and works in medicine. So, and works in nurse and works in medicine. Perfect. Love that. I was going to ask you, and we talked about this on the other podcast, but you held some pretty high level positions at a big Fortune 100 company and ran teams and ran big things. That attitude of we're not sure where we're going isn't always, in my experience, an attitude that is always given a thumbs up by, in certain industries, I would say most industries. So I'm really curious if you'd be willing to share with us, how did you balance like being a senior leader and a tech executive, telecom executive, with kind of like that natural philosophy? Because my experience is a lot of that is very controlled, and here's the 5-year thing, and here's exactly how it has to go to get there. So how did you balance that all together in order to do a good job, but also feel like you didn't lose yourself?
with high confliction, I would say, is the short answer. But how I ended up at Verizon was through a series of acquisitions. So I was working for various U.S. government agencies doing computer security. Kind of got burned out. Decided I wanted to move to another country and experience more of the world. I settled on Australia because the lifestyle's amazing, and as a Western country, it has daylight access to about 80% of the world's population. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, it does.
Yeah. So Australia is the same physical size as the continental US, but if you put it underneath, basically China, you have this like huge access to all these different cultures. So I settled in Australia so I could travel a lot. And then that company got acquired, and then that company got acquired, and that ended up being how I ended up at Verizon. And what I noticed as those companies kept getting bigger, that freedom got smaller, right? Because it's a lot of boxes, and but I was still very aspirational in my career. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to keep climbing the corporate ladder, and I can't wait to be the boss. I was so set on being the boss. And, I remember being 29, and I was running, I had a pretty big number at Verizon, just shy of $1 billion as my kind of number.
Yeah.
And I remember having this feeling of like, I can't do this anymore. What's the problem? Like, I'm finally getting to the place that I've wanted to be my whole career. And then it hit me one day, I've climbed the wrong ladder. Like, that phrase specifically stuck in my brain because of the things you mentioned, like very procedural, 5-year plans, 3-year plans, 1-year plans, 1-week plans. It didn't allow for any creativity, didn't allow for any freedom of expression. And so I quit. And that's when I got into startups, and I started my first company and haven't looked back since.
There you are. Yeah. And now you're an entrepreneur and with small companies, and that makes a whole lot of sense. You're like, I don't know, what do I want to do today? Let's create something. I don't even know what's going to happen, but that's great. And I don't have all the standard operating procedures, or you get to create the operating procedures, which can be fun. So Tom, what else at this point, what else do you want us to know about you?
Look, I love the idea about when you look back, when someone else looks back on your life, what are they going to remember you by? What is that legacy? And a lot of people, that legacy is success or fame or fortune. And through all of my experiences and going to so many countries around the world and so many cities and different cultures and everything, I kind of feel like humanity is not on a path that is going to be better for the next generation. And I think that's been true for multiple generations now. And so I really want to focus my time. That's what I'm doing with Redivider, right? This idea of a sustainable data center company. But how can we bridge the gap between humanity and the technology that we so desire? And that gap is getting bigger. So, for example, if you use, and I'm not picking on ChatGPT, it's just an example, but the average chat with an AI consumes about like one of these water bottles of water in computing resources. It has a carbon footprint of X, and this data problem is growing like 5X in the next 5 years. And so what do I want people to know about me is I really care about people on the planet, and I'm going to use all of my resources to try to make that better for my children and your children.
I love that. Yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit about Redivider because it is a interesting idea, and outside of the technology part of it, it's something that I want people to know about. So we're gonna talk about that in a little bit. Before we do that, this is the part of the show where I have my guests ask me anything they want, and I will answer it. I have no idea what's coming here. So Tom, what would you like to ask me that I can answer?
One thing that I'm always amazed by people in your position, you talk to people of wide range of abilities and skills and success levels and interests and domain expertise. If you were to sum up the kind of one or two things as character traits from all the people you've interviewed, every person you've ever talked to in your whole life, what do those few traits that are common among all of your guests?
Man, this is such a timely question. I was thinking about this, and I'm going to shout out one of my episodes from a few weeks ago. I interviewed Stephen Matthew Clark. He's sitting in a maximum security prison in Maine for he's a convicted murderer, and I interviewed him. And I was thinking about, and then the next week I released an episode with Shri, who I think you may know, who's the CEO of Craftsman. They own the Craftsman intellectual property. And what do they have in common? And it's really simple, and it's going to sound so rote and routine, but everybody I've ever talked to in the 1 hour I've spent with them, or sometimes multiple hours, they're genuinely good people, like seriously good people, like at least how they represent themselves, Tom. That's what I would say. They genuinely care about what they're doing now that can make a difference for others. And yeah, a lot of it comes from commercial success. I've talked to CEOs, I've talked to startup founders, I've talked, like you said, I've talked to college students and everywhere in between. They're all good. Like I would ask to say, like, this is a person I'd like to have a beer or a coffee with. Like, I'd like to continue the conversation. The other thing I would say is that, at least how it appears to me, the majority of them have landed on something in their life that they should be doing that has some sort of meaning. I really, if I was to go back and, man, I mean, to be honest with you, that this is probably episode about 185 on this podcast alone. I've got about 20 episodes on the other one. So we're talking over 200 interviews just on podcast. I have yet to find somebody who I don't believe is somewhat passionate / doing something they're meant to be doing from the interview. Now, some of the people I don't know at all, never met, probably never talked to again. Some of them are my dear friends. I am going to caveat that, of course, people can show up for interviews in any way they want, right? It's like going on the Tonight Show and you'd be like, oh my God, I'm so energetic. You're like, no, I'm actually a total introvert and don't talk to me ever again. But I would say that that's the first thing they have in common. And the second, well, I guess that's the second thing. The third thing is, and it's the reason I do this, is that they all are interesting. He's got something really unique, something interesting to share, something about either like their life or their story. And I know this is such a like a common thing, is like, you never know until you walk in somebody's shoes. Everybody's got it. We never know about other people's stories, but even in an hour interview, I'm always blown away by what influences what people do, what they talk about, what they care about. And it's really cool. And like, that's where the title comes from. The title, I've had a lot of people ask me where did it come from. It came from Krista Rizzo, who was guest, I think, number 5 or 6. And I'd recorded like 8 episodes. And I'm like, Krista, I don't really know what to call this show. She's like, yeah, it's talking to cool people. And I find that the people I talk to are cool people. So thank you, Krista. Because I was like, I don't really know what to call
Thanks,
this.
Krista.
Somebody gave me like a business kind of thing. I'm like, that doesn't. And then she is like, that's perfect. So yeah, that's my answer. Is I would say the 3 things are: people are genuinely good people, at least they appear that way in what they talk about. The second thing is that they are doing something that matters to them that we talk about. And the third thing is that they're cool, literally cool people. And I'm not just saying that because I don't really want to talk to people on this show that I wouldn't want to spend time with outside of recording them with them.
Yeah.
So that's what I got.
And a quick thank you. That was a beautiful answer. And a quick bonus question from me.
Yeah.
What do you get out of doing this podcast?
Oh my gosh, so many things. Let's talk about the what's in it for Jason first. Let's talk about the what's in it for Jason. And I'm going to be totally honest. It's good personal branding. Having a podcast is good. Just people can learn about me.
Yeah.
I've driven business through it. That's not why I do it, but people go, oh, before I hired you, before we talked, I saw your podcast. I listened to a couple episodes. Listened to the episode of Tom. Really liked what you had to say. Good there. It allows me to connect with people that I would never connect with otherwise, because I kind of view it as I'm offering a service where Tom can come on and we can have a cool conversation. Hopefully it's beneficial for you, and it's always beneficial for me. And then the last thing, and these are the things that are just for me, is, and Tom, you already called it out about what you like to do. Do you understand how much I learn about the world and topics that I might not learn about otherwise if I didn't interview a Tom and a murder in prison? And like, just, I learned so much about
Yeah.
topics that otherwise I mean, I could read about them, but man, there's nothing better than hearing from you about
Yeah.
green data centers. I mean, I can go Google that, but like, that's not interesting. I don't have one. I don't want to do that. So I just learn a lot about the world, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
And it also allows me to reach
Awesome.
out to people that wouldn't, I mean, if I was like, hey, I'm Jason, I'm a executive coach and a trainer, like, why would you take my call if you don't want that? But like, hey, do you want to come on my podcast? It's just like a nice warm way to
Yeah.
get to know people. Yeah, and I've made some great friends through interviews, and it's been wonderful. And the last thing through this, it's fun as hell for me, and I think people that
Yeah.
listen to the show know I love interviewing people, and it's good for my career, it's good for my skill set, for the work I do for money, and I really love it. I wouldn't do it anymore if I
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
Awesome question.
Yeah. You get to meet so many people like that.
Oh,
That's a great perk.
I mean, the truth of it is, and this is how you and I met, I have a whole bunch of PR people who send me people like, that sounds interesting. I would not meet these people otherwise, most likely. I mean, we might,
Yeah.
but, and the last thing is, it's cool. It's cool to be able to highlight great people in the world and what they're up to, and getting feedback on
Yeah.
episodes. Hey, I really like that episode of Tom where he talked about why he does what he does around AI and data center. Like, that meant a lot to me. Like, that's cool. Like, that's, it's great feedback.
Yeah.
So it feels
It's
good.
fulfilling.
Very fulfilling. Yeah.
Awesome.
And then the last thing is, I now have over 200 people that I could at least send an email to if I ever need anything, and be like, hey, like, if you remember me, but actually see you're connected to this person, or I actually have this thing. And like, likely the answer will be
Yeah.
yes, likely. Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
any other sort of networking. Yeah. Awesome question. Nobody's ever asked me that. People have asked me if I have fun with it. I'm like, yeah, of course. I don't do anything unless it's fun anymore. Although I'm too old to like not do stuff that I find enjoyable. It's kind of not everything. I hate doing taxes and those sort of things, but most of the time I try to spend most of my time doing things that are actually enjoyable, which is, I took too long to do that in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I
awesome.
agree.
Thanks so much, Tom. Let's see. What else do I want to know about you? Let's talk about Redivider for a couple minutes, because it's really fascinating stuff. So if you can just give the audience a quick summary of what it is in a non-technical way for those who are not listening, and then we'll kind of talk about the impact and such.
Yeah, so Redivider is a data center company. We focus on a sustainable data center that also has high social impact. And there's a lot of buzzwords, so let me kind of break it down.
Yeah.
If you think of, before everyone started working from home a couple of years ago, the internet was kind of rigid, right? You had a football field sized data center connected to a really big internet pipe, connected to a huge downtown office building in a city. And that was fine. But now that people are working from home half time, 3/4 time, full time, the whole fabric of the internet is different now. So your upload speeds, your download speeds, where your computing happens, where it should happen. And then you layer on top of that all these new things that are happening: IoT, smart cities, AI, just Bitcoin, all these different things that didn't exist 10 years ago. And so there's this whole new layer of the internet being built called the edge computing. And that's where you can take computing and put it closer to where the data is generated. So it's a very simple human example. Today's September 12th, Apple's announcing new iPhones today. They're going to be these fast 5G iPhones. Well, the phone is only going to be as fast as the antenna that you're connected to.
That's right.
And then it has to compute that data. So the closer you can put computing resources to those antenna, the faster your new phone is going to feel.
Yeah.
It's not going to be as fast if the computing is not there. So Redivider is making these edge data centers that have computers in them closer to the source of data. And we're doing it in a way that is sustainable and has all this carbon counting. So you understand the emissions of the facility and all the computing inside, as well as putting them in places that can have a higher social impact. And the idea is to take that new layer of the internet, this edge computing layer, and do it in a way that helps mankind instead of widens the gap between technology and humanity.
Yeah. It's almost like you've given this as a concept to people before. You've had to explain this a few times as a startup person. I'm sure this is a question you get a lot. Well, Tom, I was really drawn to the example you gave about what to do with the excess heat. So I'm thinking to myself, if we have somebody, and I'm sure we do, we have people listening, and they go, that all sounds great, but my phone works just fine. And they don't need to understand, they don't care about the technology. I'd love for you to share the example of some of the ideas you have around what do you do with the extra heat? Because I think that is a thing that everybody here and everybody on the planet can totally appreciate is good. So would you mind giving us that example that you gave on my other podcast?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to start by giving an example people can relate to and then explain it. So
yeah,
if you buy something new from the store and you use it at your house and then you're kind of done using it, that's like a waste product for you now, right? So you might go and sell that on eBay or OfferUp or a garage sale. And so it creates this like circular economy, right? Now someone else is going to take that and they're going to use it maybe for the same or different purpose. So when we kind of designed Redivider and what we were trying to do with these edge facilities, we took a look at the entirety of the supply chain in the beginning all the way to the end of life of how it works. And one of the waste products that we have as a data center, we have either hot water or we have hot air as a waste product. All these computers have to be cooled and that generates stuff. So part of the impact that we think we can do with data centers, specifically edge facilities that go closer to population centers, is that waste product into a benefit for something down the line, which in our case is going to primarily be the idea of greenhouses. So taking that waste heat, using it to build a greenhouse with a partner, we're not doing the greenhouse part. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden you're creating a local, like fresh food source for the community in which our data center operates. And for the most part, we're operating what are called opportunity zones, which is a whole complex topic we can get into if you want. But there's high correlation with opportunity zones and food deserts as well. Mm-hmm. And so by using the waste product of a data center to make fresh fruit and vegetables, our theory is over time, we can help change the relationship that children have with food. And hopefully that's going to help humanity kind of track to a much better position than, chicken nuggets every day.
Yeah, talk about the reducing the gap between people and technology. Like something that is obviously required for survival of humanity, and using, like I said, using the waste, or I mean, yeah, it's waste, but it's a necessary waste. It's just part of how it's just what it's going to be. This heat is going to be an offshoot of any computing things. We know that as a fact. How can we reutilize that as opposed to blowing it out through the top, and I don't even know all the different ways you can do it, or having to power incredibly expensive and energy air conditioning units, like water cooled things, all those things. Really, really amazing. I would highly recommend that everybody listening just check out Redivider, even if this isn't the space you're in, because it's really interesting how you're marrying these things together. It's like impact for good while also providing a service that companies need. So everybody check that out. It's super cool. You have some cool videos on there and like the concept. And I know you all been at it for a while. It's very cool. So Tom, thanks for sharing that. I'm glad we took a little segue there, because I wanted everybody to understand what it is you do. And yeah, so let's now go in deep into the therapeutic hole here. I'm going to ask you the tough question.
Let's go.
Here we go. Let's see if we make it cry. We're not going to make it cry. If I wanted to make you cry, I'd cut my finger right now and just show it to you. So yeah, that'd be fun. I would never do that. Probably not.
It would stress me out.
It would. I'm like, Tom's, like for those of you here, Tom is like, you're a very like calm, cool, collected guy. I'm like, watch this. And you're like, oh my gosh, wait, is that blood? I would probably not do that on this podcast. So Tom, what's
a movie scene that gives me nightmares?
Yeah,
it was I think it was the Ashton Kutcher movie, something like the butterfly wings or the butterfly effect.
Oh, the butterfly effect.
Anyway, there was this. Yeah, butterfly effect. There was a scene where this young kid, those like at cash register at a restaurant where they have that stick and they put receipts on it.
Yeah.
like the paper receipts. And this in
Yeah.
the movie scene, this kid takes his hands and does that onto those spikes,
Oh.
and like that scene has haunted me forever. But sorry, I
Yeah, because like
digress. But
no, like
that's
why would you do that? Like just to prove he was tough or jeez.
yeah, it was epically bad. Yeah.
Epically bad.
Anyway, sorry, I derailed. What was your question?
No, my question, Tom, is what's something that you're afraid might actually be true about you?
Oh, that's an easy one to answer. So the core philosophy that I've really come to in my life is I want to be surrounded by great people. Period. You know, it really resonated to me when you were talking about what you get out of doing the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, surrounding yourself with great people, you just end up in a place where it finds its own direction, right? So I really love that, and part of that is rejecting people that are kind of the a-hole category. And so we have a very strict policy on that. And you know, one thing I'm afraid of, I would say, is as a CEO, you have to make tough decisions sometimes, and I fear that people put me into that a-hole camp. It's because they may not know or understand the context of things, even though my, you know, constant mantra is like surround yourself with great people. And yeah, so I worry about that from time to time. But at the end of the day, decisions have to get made, and sometimes everybody has to be in that sort of position. So
Yeah.
even when you do have those moments, you know, you try to look through them and make sure the person beneath it is the great person and it's not situational, you know.
Yeah,
So I do
that
fear that. I do
yeah, that
feel
makes a
that
ton
way.
of sense. You know, I've asked this question to a lot of my guests, and we all have a multitude of things we could say here, but what's really apparent about this question is then how people index that, or I'm not even gonna say overcompensate, how they compensate for that fear. So what I hear for you is that makes a ton of sense that you're going to operate that way because you're afraid that somebody's going to think you're an a-hole, or they're going to pigeonhole you into this thing because of what you do. You're going to be very clear about what you stand for. I love that. I love that as an
Yeah.
answer. People know what you stand for, so that they can go, well, are you being an asshole? Are you, or no, you're not being an asshole, but here's what I stand for. No asshole policy. So know that I stand for that for myself as well. Like that's what
Yep.
I'm envisioning for you, is like you stand for hopefully stand for no asshole policy for yourself as well. Most of the time, you know,
Yeah.
I think everybody has the ability to go there, but that's a
Yeah.
whole different podcast.
Yeah. And if you know, I've been called out on it as well. And it's very self-reflecting. It's like, actually, I need to kind of reset, because that I actually was, and I take accountability for that. And you know, it's not about needing to be liked. I really
Yeah.
don't need to be liked.
Yeah.
I'm not an alpha person. I'm more of an omega person, where I'm going to do my thing because I believe in whatever I'm thinking or doing. So it's not about being liked. It's about doing it in a way that's better for everybody.
Yeah. Oh, great answer. That's super cool. Well, Tom, we're going to start to wrap up here. Before you do that, love to hear how you see the world. In other words, what's your life? What's your philosophy? How you see the world?
Well, like I said, I think it's the tattoo on my hand. You know, I don't know where I'm going to end up, but I'm excited about the journey. That is definitely how I see the world in all aspects, from business to family to friendships to, you know, why I live on a little country farm. You know, I I love the idea that there is things to explore in every aspect of the world. Like I don't see the world as I want to have the same day every day and
Yeah.
clock in and clock out. Like I've had that in my life, and I realize that's what I don't want. And for me, part of how I see the world is also filtering out things. Not there's not one sole attractor, but there's a lot of things that are detractors. So it's about filtering those away.
And that so resonates for me, and that's something that really wasn't present to, was a possibility for me until about 5 years ago, and it's made a huge difference in my level of satisfaction with life. And I don't know if this is something that happens as people get older or what, but man, it took me a long time to understand that I actually had a choice to filter out things, because I was always about like, what can I bring in, because I don't know, like I guess maybe it's not the way I was raised, but that was my mindset. I was like, oh, what can I do more of to feel good? But I'm like, oh, actually, a lot of the things that point to me being much happier now is things I've thrown away or given up or don't
Yeah.
worry about anymore. Man, that might be the thing that I would do my 5-minute speech on. And you asked me why I do this podcast. It's like all of it, but moments like that where I'm like, oh man, that meant a lot to me that you just said that. Cause like, yeah, and that's a good example where like, I know that about myself, but having you say it, I'm just like, oh, that's a big aha for me, that is something that I've been practicing and I can acknowledge myself for it.
Yeah.
It's super cool. Yeah, man.
And you can be proud of yourself for those moments too, right?
Yeah.
Like there's this mental framework called the conscious competency model. So just really quick, there's four layers to it. There's unconsciously incompetent, so you don't know what you don't know. There's consciously incompetent, you don't know something. There's consciously competent, where you actively know something, and then unconsciously competent, where you don't even know that you know it, like breathing. You know how to breathe, but you don't think about every breath. And whenever I find something like, I really hate this, I assess where I am on that framework. It's like, okay, well, I'm consciously incompetent, so I need to just go one layer. Like you can only progress through one of those filters.
That's right.
So when you learn something, you've got to go through 4 filters, right? You have to go, I don't know anything about it, to I know I don't. It's a lot more effort to add something to your life than it is to take something bad away.
Absolutely.
And so if you want to add something to your life, you have to remove all this negative stuff to make room for you to go 4 levels instead of 1.
Man,
so that's amazing. Just a little skeleton of how I frame it in my brain every time. It's like, do I hate this? Yes. Okay, I'm going to take 1 step to stop hating this. And I need to do this thing, but that takes 4 steps. So I'm going to go build a system to go do these 4 things.
Yeah, what's reminding me of this philosophy is I've seen this called the Johari window too, where it's like I don't know if you ever, like a couple of professors, it's the similar, I don't know if they took it, but it's like, you know what you know, you don't know what you know, or it's actually Johari window. It's people's like perception of you. So it's like, what do you know that other people know about you? What do you not know that other people know about you? What do you know that others don't know? And then the last one, I'm like, well, if you don't know it about me and I don't know it about me, what's left to do there? But it's like,
why is it there?
Yeah, why is it there? But for me, what I think of this is strengths-based work. Like if you're doing assessment work, like doing a Clifton Strengths Finder, or you're doing strengths-based work with people with a team, like, well, what are you already good at that you're probably going to enjoy learning more about, that's going to have you be really impactful versus, and I think most companies have figured this out by now, that like trying to get people to improve on things they're not good at or they don't want to do is like a lost cause most of the time. They're going to quit, they're going to leave, they're going to be mediocre in the middle versus like, well, what if we just gave you more responsibility doing more of the things you're already good at? And I just to wrap with this one, the incompetent consciousness, or maybe it's the other one, to me, the things like, have you ever taken Clifton Strengths or Strengths Finder, get your like 34 things, 10 you strengthen, the other you manage?
So, some time ago, it rings a bell, but it's not something I'm proficient in.
Yeah, well, but the reason I bring this up, Tom, is one of the things that I like to say when I do that work with people is the top 5 things on that list, they don't feel like work to you. And they're the things like, Tom, how are you able, like, you seem like a real visionary. Like, Tom, how are you able to see that? You're like, what do you mean? Like, doesn't everybody, it's like you get into a bias of like, everybody has the same way of doing it because it feels so natural. So I love that. It's like, I'm unconsciously so competent in this thing that for me is like getting up in the morning and breathing. And for others are like, how do you do that? Like, and every human on the planet has somebody go, hey, how do you do that thing? And they're like, what do you mean? What thing? I just do it. Like, I don't have to think about it. I love that. Like, what's that thing? And here's my strong advice: invest in that thing, whatever that thing is. It's like, I can do that in my sleep, and it feels so fun and so natural, and the energy is only positive. That's the thing. And like, this is a little soapbox, but man, I hope I can teach my kids that, because man, how much time do kids spend on shit that like is not easy, or they want to just to be like mildly proficient at the thing they just don't care about.
Yeah, especially when it's in contrast with the education system.
That's right.
I think my wife and I don't really fight a lot. We have like this great relationship, but I'm pretty firm on one thing that we very much disagree with. And I pretty much will forbid my children to go to higher education. I do not want my children going to college or university unless there is a function they want to do that requires regulation or certification, right?
Right.
You want to
Sure.
be a
Yeah.
lawyer or a nurse or a doctor.
Sure.
Okay, you got to go
You
through a
got to
bunch
have
of
it to
steps
do
to
it.
make
Yeah.
sure it's
Yeah.
safe and whatever. Other than that, the idea of the education system was born for making factory workers. You sit
Yeah.
at a desk and do one function over and over again.
That's right.
It doesn't empower a creative mindset. So like the standard classroom is broken, and higher education, you get one of two things. You're either going to get a network of people that you'll have for the rest of your life. Go to college for that. Great.
Yeah.
But you're just going for skills. First of all, knowledge workers have our days, me included, our days are limited with the advent of AI. And so it's really going to be about experience and decision making and the people part of that people process technology triad. So why would you go to university? Like you're going to start out burdened with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt as opposed to not. So I don't know. I think that the things we teach our kids matter from day zero.
Yes, they do.
You know, and this is one where my daughter wants to go to university. I'm like, you can totally go. You just have to explain why it's valuable and why you care when you're 8 years old. Like you shouldn't be thinking about university.
Yeah. You're like,
but
I'm picturing you're like,
system,
if you could show up with your pitch deck and the numbers to back this up and all the quantitative analysis you've done, dear, we'll have a discussion. Then we're gonna have a board meeting about it.
Yeah. But the schools should be talking to, about university prep, like in my opinion, it's like we should be focusing on the education content, not the process of education.
Yeah. Oh man. I think we have another podcast in our future, Tom. We got a lot to talk about. Let's see.
Anytime.
Yeah. So to wrap up for today, I'd love if you would leave us all with some short and sweet words of wisdom. You may have already dropped it, but I'm curious where you're going to go with it. Something that like words to live by, something that's very short, like a sentence or two at the most. What do you got for us?
Love yourself. It all starts there.
Love yourself. What I would say. It all starts there. Tom, thank you. It has been awesome to get to know you in this way after I got to know you as a CEO and business person. It's been a delight to have you on. Can't wait to have you back on again. Best to you, the family. Hopefully no blood in your future of any type. I don't want to see that. And if you figure out how to do that with an 8-year-old, you let me know, because it seems like we have a lot of scraped knees and cuts and stuff going on, like little stuff. But yeah, best of luck to you, the Redivider team, and we'll have you back on here soon to talk more about, get to know you even more. So thanks so much for your time.
Always great to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Pleasure.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and give us a shout out, or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.